Hello, friends, and welcome to Me, Mommy, and Dad's Story, Episode 7.
Welcome back. Thanks for tuning back in. In this episode, we're going to talk about rotting mostly. In the last episode, we left off that we were told about the option of rod placements, but one of the main important criteria was going to be making sure that you by yourself want to stand up, want to move about, and try on your own to walk. So that you would only be able to tell us. We wouldn't want to force you and go through the procedures if that wasn't the case. And as we talked about in the last video, unfortunately you did have fractures, arms, legs, femur, tibia, so the long bones. And what I didn't touch up on and explain at that time is unfortunately, some of the fractures, because when the fracture occurs, the bones fracture also in different places and they move apart. So that means you can't just with an x-ray or by hand kind of place them back. A lot of times that meant going in, staying in the hospital, or it's sort of like a surgery. So you would have to be sedated completely, and then that's the way they would try and place all the bones back together so they line up. Now, the way they line it up as well can't always be guaranteed that it's perfect, that it's completely straight. So that's when we started to get more and more into the discussion of how would rotting help that? And we were explained that one of the key features would be that the rod would sort of, since it's running in the middle of the bone, it would actually help the pieces stay in place in case there was a fracture. So that would mean that if that did come about, it wouldn't necessitate another stay in the hospital, getting sedated, going through all the x-rays and the placement. And they would do, it's like the bed you were operated on had an x-ray machine in there, so they would see it while they were working on it. But that was the main idea behind it. And we were still hoping that perhaps with this medicine that you're getting, the permethrin, and if you start to walk, the bones would get stronger and maybe you would not have that many fractures, and we wouldn't have to do that procedure because, again, this was something very intrusive. It's a very serious procedure, and there's also the chance of the body rejecting the hardware, so to speak. That's what they call it. So the Valfacier rods, so the OI rods. And we were still waiting to see, as you've seen in the pictures before, so you had those fractures, they would heal. And then we were waiting to see, are you going to start kind of walking, crawling on your own, starting to do the regular movements that would indicate that you do want to stand up and kind of attempt walking. And I remember the day that did happen, Kevin, and it was unbelievable. It was wonderful. So you started, and obviously this was a lot later than for other kids, which was fine. We were just hoping to get to that point. But you started doing some movements where you're not just kind of crawling, you're able to sit up by yourself. And then we would see that you are doing sort of the motions where you're holding on to like a couch or something, and you're starting to do the movements to stand up on your own. And then we saw that you did do that. And you stood up and you were standing on your own 2 feet, of course, kind of leaning on something. But that was a moment where, again, I felt like I just absolutely don't know what to do.
I'm assuming you were terrified?
I was. And I had that instinct just to like run over there and pick him up, hold him. What is he doing? And I remember that was very shortly after. That was wonderful. And we were nervous, happy, very excited, saying, look, this is something that we were told before he might never, ever do. And here he is trying to stand up, and he's standing up, and me and Kate were ecstatic. We're like, okay, this is wonderful. And I remember not shortly after, one night, we were just, it was just me and you kind of in the room. I think K-Mom was cooking or doing something like that. And you were doing your standing up routine. So you're kind of like on your 2 feet, holding on, I think it was like to a couch. And then this was scary for me. Then I saw you just let go of it.
Okay.
No hands holding on, and you started taking your first steps. And of course, it was a little bit, how should I put this, wobbly. It looked like you were kind of leaning from side to side. So it wasn't completely a confident walk, but you just started walking. And I was like kind of standing behind you. What am I going to do? Am I going to just grab him? Is he going to fall? What's going to happen? And you just kind of started walking, laughing at the same time. And I'm like, why is, you were so excited that you could walk. And I think now, knowing your character, you enjoyed that fear in Dad's eyes and seeing me just kind of not know what to do and all scared. And yes, you did take your first steps all by yourself. And you had that curly hair, the curly blonde hair, and you were just laughing, the happiest kid. So that was a very, very wonderful moment. We were so excited about that. And after that came a very brief period where you did start. Of course, you couldn't walk completely on your own. So you would be assisted. I would hold you like this, right under your arms, to not put pressure on anything. And that would give you the freedom, yes, to move your arms about as well. And you had that stability, so you wouldn't fall. And we started doing that, applying pressure, bearing weight, doing exercises as well. And at that point, we were hoping, maybe we don't have to do anything else. Maybe this can truly work, and that you would be able to get better and be able to walk freely, assisted, but still on your own. And unfortunately, a little time later, you did have a fracture, and it was one of those that couldn't just be simply put into place. So they had to, again, do kind of the same procedure as it would be for a surgery. And at that time, we sat down again with the whole team, and especially the orthopedic team said, look, this would be a good time to do a rod placement, because we're going to have to go in. We have to make the cuts anyway and kind of realign, get the bones in order. And this was in your arm. So there is a different type of rod they use for the arms, and these are fixed rods, so they don't extend because the bones are much smaller in diameter inside where the rod needs to be placed. And you were, of course, little as well, and we went with the option of having the rod placement, and this would be a way to kind of see if it does help. If your body accepts it, and then if something does happen, then we can go ahead and possibly place it in the other long bones, such as the femurs and the tibia. So we did go ahead with the procedure, and thank God that went well. And it actually meant that you had a fixed rod now in your arm. And at that time, we went through the whole procedure. Your body did not reject it. I know, that was a big concern as well. And we started seeing the difference in that. And that really meant that if you had smaller fractures or microfractures, the rodding actually kept the bones in place. Yes, strong arms. And the other main benefit of the rodding would be it would help with the bowing or the curving of the bones themselves as they form. So one of the big signs in the severity of your case was that the bones started bowing. And as I explained before, if the bones start bowing and they're not straight, that puts a lot of pressure in certain points on it, and it's a lot more prone to fractures. And again, the problem was when it does fracture, it would sort of break into little pieces and move away from one another. And if you know, when you have I know, I'm sorry, it's a little tough topic.
Definitely.
But it's something that we needed, and these were tough discussions as well, and tough decisions on our parts. And one of the main important things that we wanted was the bone needs to be close connected together so they can heal again, and they can form a callus, and that way they can be put back together by the body. So and at every fracture there was also the question, is it going to heal right? Is the callus going to form correctly? So rotting overall, for anybody that's going through this or is thinking about it, or kind of in a similar situation, rotting will help with those issues. And it certainly did in your case. So we don't know what would have happened without it, but we can guess that a lot more bowing, a lot more fractures that gave different points. So actually the trajectory of the bone itself would change with every single time. Imagine a straight line that's complete, or imagine a one that has little bumps in the road, little left and right, and little deviations. When you put pressure on it, it amplifies it.
You know, I still kind of remember when we had to get the rods. I'm just going to say that wasn't the best experience, but I am still glad that I got it.
I know, and as you can imagine, of course, I remember you were just so scared, and we were scared for you along as well with just going in there and having that surgery, because every time, one, you were in pain before and after the surgery. There's a ton of pain. We were worried during the surgery. There's always the chance of other fractures happening in different parts of the body because you're getting moved around. So that was always a stress. There was also that fear itself of initially and afterwards, when we put the different rod, will the body reject that rod? Is there going to be a complication from the surgery itself? Because this is a foreign object in the body and place, and it is metal. So there are always certain possibilities, but luckily we were fortunate enough, and your body was able to accept it, and it was working fine. Now, then you started walking again, and we were holding you, of course, not long distances. We were very excited, and then you had a very major fracture of the femur again. And in this particular instance, unfortunately, the bone was fractured in 5 different places. And it wasn't from impact, it was just, regular, just from walking. So that was the time we said, we are not going to wait any longer. And I remember, yes, you were, K-Mom was just holding you, trying to console you, and you were in a ton of pain. And this was the time to go in and say, look, they're gonna have to do that surgery. We choose this the right time, instead of going in and doing an artificial fracture or something to place the rods. The whole team said this will be the perfect timing, and they went ahead and placed the rod. Now in your femur, they did a different rod, because you can imagine the rod that they put in the beginning, the fixed rod, you would outgrow it, so the bones would continue to grow, and you would have sections of your bone that aren't held together by the rod, protected. So what they did in the femurs in your legs is it's an extending rod. So as you go along, and we're doing the x-rays and we're kind of looking at it, you could actually see by the second piece of the rod, the interior that's extending, the telescopic one, you could actually see how much you are growing. And it would grow along with the bones. Now it's cool. Yes, isn't it? Like, that gave you a lot of time. Now, at some point, they do have they do have to replace those if you so choose, if it's fully extended, because because after that portion, the body is not protected anymore. And then, of course, you had a different fracture on the other leg, and that's when we, once again, decided to place a rod. So you have it in your left and right legs. And then we also did the tibia and, of course, the arms. And just remember, every time you had one of those surgeries, it would mean a lot of recovery time, starting all over again. It's about 6 months or so, and a lot of that, half the time, or almost all of it, is sitting stationary, just trying to get to be able to move your leg again, and then therapy to try and bear weight on it, and slowly therapy to try and get you to stand and then to walk again. And I remember there was just so much pain, with this fracture. And the last one that I remember, that was a really tough one. So one of the things that we were hoping is, what we were told is, after we have this rodding, you won't require major surgery because the rod will hold the bone in place and it won't have those fractures. And then, of course, after you recovered from the surgeries and the rod placement, and you did the therapy and all that time had passed, you started to bear weight, stand again. For short periods of time, you would actually be able to stand kind of holding on to something. And then any movements or walking you would do, you would also be assisted. So it would either be holding you like this, or when you're feeling stronger, just kind of holding you by one hand, giving you that support. So you had that confidence, that comfort, the knowledge that, you can hold on to something, that you're not completely on your own. And we were happy about that because initially and overall the goal is to get you to be more independent, so you can stand and walk short distances, even if it is assisted, but to be able to stand up, sit down, and again, walk around, do your exercises, even if it is assisted, be able to walk very short distances. And then you just had one major fracture, even with the rods in. And that's the time when, it really fractured in very many places.
I remember that one, and it was a lot of pain when something would break, and it was never a fun experience.
I know, and you are now able to express your fears because you were able to talk to us and let us know how it's hurting. Of course, I remember at that time you were thinking, why did we place the rods if this is going to be happening, or if I'm back in surgery. So that carried with us, again, a lot of discussion about, did we do the right thing? Did we not? How is this not taking care of that? And it was so lucky that K-Mom, of course, like I said, you wouldn't be walking by yourself. So she was right there holding you and was able to just grab you up real quick. Because remember, if you have a fracture like that, or your leg gives out and then you fall again, there's also the risk of now having other fractures in parts of the body. So she was able to just kind of grab you up real quick, and then of course we rushed to the hospital, and that was a time where they saw that the actual rod bent itself as well. So they had to completely take that out and replace it with a brand new rod. And that was the point when, after that, you just couldn't walk, couldn't really stand. And that's the point from which we started again. And that's what all the therapy now is about. And what we are doing is to try and get you back on track, try and recover all that time, try and get you to be also confident. I know independent, exactly. Not completely, we know that. So the goal isn't, it would be nice, but it's realistic that you can't do those other things and be able to do it by yourself, but at least walking about, even if it is with the assistance, being able to do things that make you independent, even if it's within a small setting like a house or just short distances. And that's what we are hoping for. So that's where the rotting was helping us try and achieve that goal. We did have a major setback with it, but we are going forward and hoping for the best. And of course, Kevin continues to do the therapy and continues to do the exercises and try and bear weight. Yes, so that brings us to the close of this episode, and hopefully you'll tune in to us next week.
I love you all, KevinGers. Have some cell phone KevinG hugs, and bye-bye.
See you soon.
See you soon.